Are vegan low-carb diets healthy or unhealthy? Coming right up. Hey, I'm Dr. Ekberg with Wellness for Life, and if you'd like to truly master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss anything. So this video was requested by one of my viewers called Little Voice, and she saw a video by Ask Goji Man, and she asked, is there any truth to all these claims? So let's take a look. Are vegan low-carb diets healthy or not? Well, we're not going to talk so much about vegan or not, but I'm going to address these claims because there's a lot of incorrect statements here. Claim number one, the body is designed to run on carbohydrates, that your brain, heart, and liver prefers glucose. While the brain runs primarily on glucose, when glucose is plenty, it can run as much as 75% on a fat byproduct called ketones. So that is an incorrect statement. Heart prefers fat. If you don't eat enough good quality fat, especially saturated fat from a natural source, then the body is forced to convert carbohydrates into fat so that the heart can have its preferred fuel. And most of your other organs run from a mix of carbohydrate and fat. In a stressful situation, they up-regulate their sugar use, and in normal circumstances, they run more on fat. So that is incorrect. Claim number two, glucose is converted into ATP, therefore the body literally runs on carbohydrate. That is pure nonsense because everything that you eat gets turned into ATP. If your body can convert it into energy at all, it is because it turned it into ATP. So fat, protein, and carbohydrates all turn into ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's your body's energy currency. And one molecule of glucose can be turned into up to 38 units of ATP. And the same holds true for protein. Fat, however, can be turned into as much as 146 to 163 units of ATP. So it's a much denser, much more efficient storage form of energy. We can get much more energy out of the fat than the glucose. But either way, it's going to be turned into ATP before we can use it for energy. So that does not mean that the body literally runs on carbs. Claim number three, fat and protein can be turned into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. This is true, but the video says this only happens if there aren't carbs available, and this is not true. A lot of things, there's hundreds or thousands of processes in the body that always happen to some degree. But the body adapts, so depending on circumstances, we upregulate or downregulate. It happens more or less, but it's not an on or off switch. So again, gluconeogenesis happens under all circumstances. It does happen more, obviously, when carbs are low, but it still happens on a regular basis. Claim number four. The World Health Organization recommends that 60 to 70% of your calories come from carbohydrates, and 10 to 15% should come from protein, and 20 to 30% should come from fat. And he says that every health organization is pretty much on the same page on this. And this is true. That is what they recommend. It doesn't make it a good idea. These people are not health experts, they're not doctors, they're not clinicians. They're academicians, they're administrators, and they're politicians. That's why they put them high in organizations. That's what they're good at. They're not good at health. So I, for one, am not going to take my health advice from administrators. So it's a correct statement, just not a wise one in my opinion. Claim number 5. Carbohydrates are the preferred fuel for the body, and therefore the body will only use fat and protein for energy when it's forced to do so, and also through the process of ketosis when carbohydrates are really low. And it is true that carbohydrates will be used first, but in no way does that mean that it's a preferred fuel. It's the most dangerous thing there in the body, so it has to be gotten rid of as soon as possible. So think about it this way. A good blood sugar level is somewhere between 80 to 100, or 80 to 90, ideally, milligrams of glucose per deciliter. That means at any given time, the average person has 4 to 5 grams of glucose in their bloodstream. If that increases even just a little bit, up to 6.5 grams, that's toxic. That's the level of a diabetic. When your blood sugar gets up to that level, you're classified as a diabetic. And if it gets even higher, then you can have what diabetics experience as a diabetic coma. So sugar is very, very toxic to the brain, and that's why it is so closely monitored, and that's why it's so quickly disposed of. The blood sugar is always kept at a certain level, and if you eat fat, it's going to stay at a steady level. If you eat carbohydrate, it's going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, creating an unstable supply and constant roller coaster swings, with the reactive hypoglycemia as a very common problem. Claim number 6. The body stores carbohydrates, therefore they are essential. The body stores a lot of things. It stores fat, protein, and carbohydrate. It stores the least carbohydrate because it's very difficult. It can only be stored as glycogen, and the body is very limited to how much glycogen it can store. It will store a maximum of about 2,000 calories of glycogen, but it can store hundreds of thousands of calories of fat. Even a lean person like myself can store has on the body about 100,000 calories of fat, but I cannot store any more than 2,000 calories of carbohydrate. So that in no way makes carbohydrates essential. Claim number 7, the brain and the red blood cells use glucose only. So this is half true. The brain we talked about, it can run as much as 75% on fat through ketones. So that is incorrect. But here is a correct statement. The red blood cells do only use glucose. But it's never a problem because there's always some blood glucose available. But they don't need a whole lot because the red blood cells are interesting little things. They're very specialized. During their development, they eject their nucleus. So they don't have a lot of stuff in them that needs energy to manufacture things. They're transport vehicles. And their job is to transport oxygen, not to use it. If you have to use anything else than sugar, you have to use oxygen. So that's a specialization that the red blood cells have gone through so that they can deliver oxygen without using it. However, they can only get about 2 units of ATP from a glucose molecule instead of 38. If we want to get more than 2, we have to use the oxygen. And again, the red blood cell's job is to deliver oxygen, not to use it up. That's why they only use glucose, and they're the only cells that do that, as far as I know. Claim number 8. There are 2 molecules of water associated with every molecule of glycogen. And it is true that glycogen is what we call hydrophilic. It attracts water, it holds water to it like a sponge. But it's incorrect that it's 2 molecules to 1 molecule, because glycogen is an enormous molecule. It holds tens of thousands of units to it, so there's tens of thousands of molecules of water per glycogen molecule, not 2. So the 2 comes from the fact that it holds about 2 to 3 times its weight in water. Claim number 9. On a low-carb diet, you can lose weight initially, and you will lose 6 to 10 pounds very quickly, but it's all water. There's some truth to this, because most of the weight loss in the beginning is water, but that's true for no matter what diet you go on. It is not true that 6 to 10 pounds are due to the water loss from glycogen. That is limited to about 3 to 4 pounds, because you can only store about 1 pound of glycogen, which holds about 2 to 3 times its weight in water. Claim number 10. Ketosis is only normal if you're sick or starving. This is not true. Again, there's thousands of processes going on in the body all the time, and they don't go on or off, they go up or down. And every night you do a little bit of upregulation for ketosis. Everyone makes more ketones during the night, so it's a normal phenomenon. And it is true there is more when we are sick or starving, because the body is very adaptive. Claim number 11, you may lose weight with a ketogenic diet, but he says it's all water loss. And also he says the weight loss is not sustainable, because if you keep eating like that, then you're going to gain the weight back. So again, I'm sorry all you guys who have consistently lost weight over years and years. That didn't really happen. And we do know that carbohydrates is a food that triggers insulin, and insulin is a fat storage hormone. So we do know, and there is an abundance of meta-analysis, meta-studies on this, and there's a lot of clinical research and results as well, that the carbohydrates trigger insulin, causes fat storage and insulin resistance. If you want to get out of that, you reduce the carbs and you fix the problem. Claim number 12. Fat in the blood slows the blood flow and thereby creates insulin resistance, high cholesterol, and cardiovascular disease. And this is really interesting, because it's the blood sugar that turns into fat. Triglycerides, high triglycerides, which is fat in the blood, is almost invariably caused by high blood sugar, because if you're insulin resistant, the blood sugar can't get out into the cell, so the body has no choice but to convert it into fat. And now you have some of this happening, but the insulin resistance is a result of the carbohydrates, not the fat. And the high cholesterol and the cardiovascular disease comes from inflammation, which is a result of insulin due to carbohydrates. So an incorrect statement. Claim number 13. These are all the reasons that the World Health Organization recommends a high-carb diet. The main reason that they do that is that they're politicians, and there is something called lobbying. The biggest industry in the world is processed foods, and they need to pack a bunch of starch and sugar into their food, and they have lobbyists who influence all these politicians in the World Health Organization and any other health organization. That's why the Captain Crunch and the marshmallow cereals have a heart-healthy symbol on them because there is lobbying activity. Claim number 14. Low carb and keto is not good in the long run. It's not a long-term diet. So the only way the longest term that I can think of would be as long as Homo sapiens has been around, then that would be about 250,000 years. There has probably, most likely, due to all the available evidence, we have probably had a whole lot better access to fat and protein through the months of the year than we have vegetables and fruit and grain. Grain is a new addition in the last 10,000 years. So low carb and ketosis is what humans have done for most of their existence. So long-term study would be the 250,000 years that we have been around. So again, that is not a correct statement. So one thing that he said was that I completely agree with, that a lot of confusion comes about from eating processed foods. It's not so much whether we can eat a certain potato or we can eat a certain thing, but it's when we turn the potato into a potato chip. It is when we process the food, we destroy the nutrients, we change it around. We still need to eat low carb, but if we eat whole food, it's going to be pretty much low carb. And grains have not been part of human diet for all of these years. As far as the vegan aspect, I don't want to get into a whole lot of detail. So this is not about vegan versus not, but we need to understand that some of the things that we do can be good short-term and some can be good long-term. So vegetables are cleansing. They're wonderful for a short period of time to clean out the body, to cleanse the liver, to assist the body in getting rid of accumulated junk. But it's not a long-term plan. It's not good for the long term because it doesn't have the building blocks. Animal products have better quality building blocks and they're more bioavailable. They go more directly in their natural form in the body. So we need both. We need vegetables and we need animal foods. Animal foods and vegetables in the long run for balance, and lots of vegetables for periods of time as a cleanse. So I hope that helps answer some of these questions. And these are important questions. These are very common misunderstandings. There's a lot of myths. There's a lot of outright misinformation. So if you'd like me to do individual videos on some of these, then please let me know. I'll probably do some anyway, but if there's specific ones that you'd like to know more about, let me know and I'll do a short video on that and expand on it. If you're new to this channel and you enjoy this kind of information where we talk about how things really work so that you can get as healthy as possible, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that we can keep this content coming your way. Thanks for watching.